Being the first daughter and first child has always been a great struggle for me, making too many sacrifices and giving up my great dreams. This story I felt today is the story of my life. I have always been a good child, well trained, disciplined, and very focused. My parents were just middle class, and we could barely afford the necessary things. My parents were hardworking, decent, and disciplined. Despite our condition, they raised I and my four siblings to be content with what we had. We grew up in love and understanding, managing what we had with happiness. We were ambitious yet content. I finished secondary school quite early, so at 17, I had gained admission into the university to study computer science. I was very happy and I danced for joy, celebrating my achievement. It was my first attempt and I got in. My parents and siblings were overjoyed. Despite not having much, my parents promised to provide everything I needed for school. My parents kept to their promise and did everything possible so I could resume school alongside my peers. My first year in the university was not easy, but I stayed strong, never forgetting my roots or whose daughter I was. In my second year, something tragic happened. My father had an accident and broke his spinal cord. He was confined to a wheelchair and my mom had to take care of him. It was a trying time for the family and things took a turn for the worse. It became difficult for my family to feed. With too many bills to pay, we were all struggling. I had no money for school handouts and other expenses. The little I earned from odd jobs went towards supporting my family. Things were really bad. I could not see or bear to see my family suffer. As the first child, I decided to quit school. There was no point continuing with that money. I was going to suffer with that money. Instead, I resolved to find a job and support my parents and siblings. I finally quit school and returned home. Fortunately, I got a job at the factory. The pay wasn't bad, so I started working there. I was diligent, punctual, and hardworking, often putting in extra hours to make more money. By God's grace, I had begun to give my family hope. At least there was food on the table. I even paid for my brother JAMB lesson. If I could not finish my education, I was determined to ensure all my siblings became a graduate. After years of writing JAMB, my brother finally gained admission into the university. I was already 22 years. It felt like a dream come true. He was so happy. And I was also happy. But deep down, I was sad. I had just finished paying the house rent and did not have enough money left for his school fees and other expenses. I sat on the bed thinking about the situation that night. I could not let my brother lose this opportunity. I started thinking of possible ways to get money, even if it was loan. I started making calls, calling the people I thought could be of help, but help did not come. The people that genuinely wanted to help me had no money, and the one who had money gave me impossible conditions. I was getting frustrated. Some used the opportunity to mock me and gossip about me. I cried often when I was alone. The burden was too much. At such a tender age, I had so much to worry about, but I never showed my weakness in front of my family. One day, a close friend approached me and offered to give me 3 times the money I needed, but only if I could sleep with him. This was someone I considered very close. I knew he had the money, but his condition was crazy, disgusting, and degrading. I was speechless. He saw my frustration and wanted to take advantage of it. I bluntly declined. Some might call me foolish, but wasn't ready to trade my body for money. I could not bear the shame it would bring. He was surprised. He could not believe I was refusing such a large sum of money for something considered insignificant. But I stood my ground, even in pain and sadness. He was ashamed of himself, and I quickly made my way home. As soon as I got home, I collapsed on the floor and burst into tears. It was all too much for me. I felt exhausted, but immediately I heard a knock on the door. I quickly wiped my tears, fixed a bright smile on my face. Later that night, I sat on my bed, weeping like a child. Amidst my tears, I remember a distant friend, Ari. I decided to call him. I explained everything to him and he felt pity for me. He knew how hard-working I was and promised to do his best to help. The next day, he sent me the exact amount I needed. I was so happy. I danced with joy. I gave my brother the money so he could pay for the necessary things. He was so happy and appreciative, even though I was just 2 years older than him. I kept thanking Ari, my friend, who continued to encourage me. Months later, I lost my job. I became sad and depressed as finding a new job became difficult. Ari kept on encouraging me. One day, he suggested I visit a city for a break. He wanted to take me around and help lift my spirits. I accepted the offer after much persuasion. I truly needed the break, but my best friend, was totally against it. She said it was too risky to stay in a man's house for days. What if he wanted sex? I just laughed and told her we were just friends. Besides, he has not shown any interest in me like that. I just see him as an elder brother I never have. My best friend said I was just naive. Guys always assume it was a normal thing. But I reassured her and convinced her that Harry was a nice man. I began to arrange my stuff. Harry had already booked my flight ticket. It was going to be my first time to board a plane, and he also gave me money to get some stuff for myself and also to make my hair. My siblings were aware of my trip, but I made up a different story for my parents. On that said day, I left. I boarded my flight. I had the plans of staying for 4 days, and in no time we landed. Harry picked me up and drove me to his duplex in a beautiful estate. To be honest, I never knew that Harry was that wealthy. I had met him at my workplace where he came to purchase some item and we became friends. His house was stunning and I could not help but to compliment it. He took me to a large room and I quickly realized it was his. I asked him where I would be sleeping. He explained that the other room weren't furnished yet and suggested we share his room. I thought about it for a while. The bed was wide enough and I figured I could sleep comfortably on the edge. So I agreed. But out of curiosity, I secretly checked the other room and found out he was indeed telling the truth. They were not furnished. That night, Harry cooked and served me dinner. We chatted until late before finally going to bed. The next morning, I woke up very happy and excited for the day ahead. Harry had planned to take me out and he already got some beautiful dresses for me. We visited beautiful places. I had so much fun that I almost forgot I was jobless. When we got home, we continued talking until I was too tired to stay awake. I freshened up and went straight to the bed. Around midnight, I felt someone touching me. Startled, I sprang up in fear and discovered it was Harry's hands on my body. Thinking it was a mistake, I removed his hand and adjusted myself. I went back to sleep. But soon I felt the touch again. I woke up and this time Harry held me. He wanted to have sex. In my head, I was like, not you again. My heart pounded in disbelief. I pushed him away firmly and yelled at him not to come close to me again. What kind of nonsense is this? I said in annoyance. Grabbing a pillow, I stormed out into the sitting room and lay in the rug. As I lay there, I started crying. I remember my best friend warning and became filled with so much regret. If I had known, I would have listened to my friend. I would have totally avoided this journey. I felt betrayed, ashamed, and deeply sorry for myself. Eventually, I cried myself to sleep. The next morning, the atmosphere was tense and awkward. We felt distance, just greeting, not too much conversations. I regretted coming. Later that day, Harry sat me down for a conversation. He was dressed to go out. He apologized for everything, saying he thought I understood the whole sleepover. I told him I sincerely did not know he was going to have sex with me. He then advised me not to try this with any man if I wasn't ready. I should not go to their house to sleep over. He said a lot of things that I didn't even know. I knew he meant well, but the more he talked, the guiltier I felt. This was someone who had helped me countless times without hesitation. And if I could not shake that feeling that I was being ungrateful, I started seeing myself as indebted to him, as though I owed him something. I felt like a wicked person and a heartless person, and I decided to pay my debts. That night, I made the most painful decision of my life. I have never been with a man before, and that night, I decided to grant Harry his wish. I laid on the bed like a log of wood, clenching my fists and grinding my teeth together. The lights were off, so Harry could not see the silent tears streaming down my face. I cried softly, waiting for it to be over. My whole body wasn't responsive at all. I couldn't understand how Harry was enjoying himself. His touch irritated my skin, not because he was dirty, but because I felt absolutely nothing for him. On that bed, I made a vow never to be indebted to anyone. I promised I would do anything, everything in my power, never to be at anyone's mercy. I was never going to be stranded. I would try by all means to come out of poverty. When it was finally over, I stood up, walked to the bathroom to bed. I sat in the bathtub crying. I cried that even my body was shaking. I felt dirty. I felt ashamed of myself. What have I done? I kept asking myself. I just gave my pride to a man that I don't even love. I felt pain all over my body, and I began to beg God for forgiveness. I told God I was sorry for breaking my covenant of waiting till my wedding night. After my prayer with God, I felt a little small sense of peace. I took my bed and I went back to bed. I think God forgave me because for some reasons I had a peaceful sleep. The next day, I sat thinking about what had happened the previous night, but I interacted with Harry as if nothing happened. We laughed and spoke normally, though my laughter was forced. I just wanted to get through the day and leave. Harry had already booked my flight and I couldn't wait to return home. That night, Harry still gave me more advice. Maybe he genuinely cares about me, but that was not my concern. I just can't wait to go home where I have peace. It was a small space, but I had peace, surrounded with people who genuinely loved me. Finally, I returned home. My siblings were overjoyed to see me, and I was equally happy to be with them. But I kept everything that happened a secret from them. I resumed job hunting immediately, and soon luck smiled on me. At 23, I was smart, focused, hardworking, kind, and generous. Despite my young age, I managed my family well, giving them all the support they needed. Then I got a job I wasn't even qualified for, and I knew it was God's grace. I initially applied for a sales representative position in a big company. On the day of the interview, the CEO happened to be present and he was impressed by the way I spoke, and instead of hiring me as a sales rep, she offered me the role of her personal assistant. I was overjoyed and determined to give my best. I threw myself into the job with dedication, refusing to let doubts or fear hold me back. My competence and hard work spoke for themselves as I became an asset to the company. After I got back from my trip, I decided to cut Harry out of my life. I had my reasons. I wanted to focus on my growth and leave the past behind, so I made sure I worked harder and smarter. I worked tirelessly, even on my days off, taking up other jobs to ensure my family was comfortable. God was helping me. My family were living better than before. The promise I made to myself that night, I was going to keep it. I was never going to go back to that situation again. I still tried love and relationship, but that left me broken and depressed. There were nights I cried endlessly, but whenever I felt it was becoming a distraction to my work, I forced myself to snap out of it. Eventually, I decided to take a break from relationship. because I deserve the best and I was never going to settle for less. One amazing thing about my journey was that from the way I spoke and carried myself, no one will ever guess I was a school dropout. I made conscious effort to keep learning and reading every day and every opportunity, determined to make the best of myself. By the time I was 32 years, I had already trained all my siblings through university. My immediate younger brother, who got job as soon as he graduated, became a huge support. Despite people gossiping that my family might abandon me after all my sacrifices, God proved them wrong. My siblings were kind and grateful. They encouraged me to focus on myself and even urging me to learn new skills regardless of my age. It was during the period of the skill learning that I met my husband, one of the greatest blessings of my life and a true answer to my prayers. Soon we got married and our wedding was grand thanks to my loving siblings and my husband, who ensured it was beautiful and a successful event. A year into our marriage, God blessed us with a twin and later 3 more children. Today, I am a proud mother of 5, a loving wife, a great daughter, and a wonderful sister. My family is happy and at peace, and I could not be more grateful to God for how far we have come through. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like and subscribe to my channel.